Hi everyone, I'm the plant propagator and welcome to my channel. Today I'm in the laboratory today and this is a special request video, and what I want to go over is it's really specialized what I want to talk about today, and that is how I prepare my flasks for the media. And this was brought up again because there's some issues with this that I think I've resolved. I've tried a few different preparation approaches, and what I've come up with is a method that I think works really nicely. So when I prepare the flasks for the media, I use either 16 or this size 32-ounce deli containers. These are polypropylene containers. The base is polypropylene, the lid is polypropylene, and that is important. I'll put the links to my source of these containers in the video description, so if you're interested you can purchase these. I've previously talked a little bit about how I make these into vented containers, and vented containers have I melt a hole in the lid and then I add a cotton ball to that hole, and I'm going to show you how I do that in just a second. And again, I have a video that I'll put a link that you can see how I make two different types of vented containers if you want to take a look at that. All right, so these, and you have to use the procedure that I'm going to share with you today is something that I developed because if you just autoclave this container or pressure cook this container like this and seal it, what happens when the container cools down is that it collapses, and you don't want that, and it ruins the containers, and you don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to autoclave this container like this, and then show you what happens if you autoclave it without the proper type of venting and what happens with this, and I'm sure we're going to see collapse of this container. What I want to do though before we get into that is I want to show you a little bit of how I make the lids on these things. So I melt the holes and lids in the lids of these containers. So the lid, this is an intact lid right here, and this is a lid that has the hole in it right here. And what I do is I take a pipette and I heat it up and I melt a hole in the lid. Other people can use soldering irons and melt a hole in there, but this is a good size because what you do with this lid with a hole in it, you can't just leave the hole there. But what you do is I take jumbo cotton balls that I get at really any big box store, and I take those, and you have to massage them just a little bit and loosen up the ball a little bit and then put them through the hole, and it's a little bit of a tight fit, but that's fine. And then I spread it out. I make it kind of into a mushroom shape. I spread it out at the top and the bottom, and this is what you end up with right here. And I make these and I use these, and this lets the container vent a little bit. You don't want gas buildup inside the container. You want some minimal ventilation. You don't want it so ventilated so that contamination slips inside, and I found that this works pretty well. And then in order to hold the cotton ball in place, I just take a piece of tape and seal the top. When you do this, you have to make sure that the bottom of the tape is open, because you want, again, gas exchange. The bottom of the lid is open and the top is mostly closed, but then you have vent ports on the side of this tape. So you don't want to completely seal the cotton ball. It doesn't work. It doesn't do anything. Okay, let's get back to these containers. If you autoclave or pressure cook a stack like this, what I have found is that it's the same type of thing that putting a lid on the container. What I have found is that the air heats up, the air gets out okay, these containers are pushed apart and the air gets out okay, but then when this whole stack cools, what happens is that it actually compresses the bottom of the container, essentially ruins the container. A vacuum is formed. These all get stuck together, so you can't even take them apart anymore. When they're new, they're sometimes hard to get apart just because they fit so tightly together. And when you autoclave it and let it cool, you'll ruin the containers, and I've ruined quite a few of these containers. So what I do in order to prevent that is I put something at the base of each container, and what I want to do is show you how I do that. There's really nothing to this. In the laboratory, I use these, which are pipette tips, but you can use anything that is autoclave or pressure cooker stable. So you don't want something that will melt. So you can put this container, and you put this in the bottom of the container like this, and then you put another container on the top. And I have a different size tip right here. You put this at the bottom, and I'm holding them at the side because what you want to do is keep on stacking these in, and when you stack them up the right way, what it allows you to do is place all of these containers together like this, and then at the end of the autoclave run, what you can see with the containers here is that you have these things separating the containers, but also these have holes in them, so it allows these containers to vent. So you don't get compaction, you don't have compression and a ruining of these containers. What I do then at this point is I take these and I place them in another polypropylene tub, and this is the same tub that you can get from big box stores. I got this from Walmart, and then again, this has a polypropylene base and a polypropylene top. I use these tubs for deflasking. And so when I deflask my orchids, I put them in here and I put the top on, and it happens that this container is polypropylene, so I use this for you can autoclave this and it's stable, and I've autoclaved this container probably, and many of these deli containers, I've autoclaved this container probably around 10 or 15 times at this point. Eventually what's going to happen is the polypropylene may get brittle and break, and you may have to buy another container, but they're fairly economical, so I think it's fine to do this. What I do with my lids is I don't autoclave the container, just because I have so many containers that I'm putting together here, and so what I do is I put the lids in separately. All right, so if there's room, I'll slide these down in between, but there's not room. So what I'll do is I put these containers, the tops in separately, and I'll put this on. After this autoclaves, I will put this in the hood and then open them up and put the containers together, and there we're fine. But what I want to do at this point is autoclave these guys and autoclave this, so you can see what happens with this container. And then after the autoclave and the cooling, we'll come back and take a look at how to assemble these guys. And I've got media that I'm doing in the same run, so I'll pour some media in these containers as well. Okay, so let's get these into the autoclave, and after we're done and everything's cooled off, we'll take a look. And as you can tell, we are back from autoclaving. So this is the container that had the bases and the lids in them, and these right here are the containers that I just autoclaved separately. And what you can see is that if if they don't vent properly when they're cooling down, you'll get a little collapse out of this. So these containers collapse, and it depends on how good the seal is, but I've seen what happens is these get so collapsed so that you can't salvage them anymore. This one's okay. This has also been previously used. Here's another container that I just had cotton balls. So what I do when I ship some flasks is I put sterile cotton balls in. So I put cotton balls in this container, and actually this is a vented container, and even though the container is vented, the container cools down so quickly so that it collapsed a little bit, and the cotton balls are holding it up. And I don't know whether you can tell, but this container is collapsing just a little bit. And so you can get away with this. The problem is when you stack these containers, typically when you get these things in order to save space, you stack them in autoclave. When you stack them in their new containers, the seal is really good. So then the bases of these containers, when they stack, collapse quite a bit. But let's take a look at this container. And the hood is running and it's out, so I can take the lids off this container. I can take the lid off, and as you might expect, we're not going to really see anything. So we have, and I took the lid off. I can't put it back on now because I took it off outside the hood. But these are the tops of the containers that are right here, and then the bases. And I'm going to move these out of the way carefully. The bases of these other containers. So let's pull this stack out. Actually, I gotta get the other containers on this side. And it is, you know, when you work in a hood, it's always awkward. That's just kind of how it is, and you just get used to it. So these are the containers that we put in, and as you can see, what happened is the pipette tips that were in there kept the containers from collapsing. Normally, again, what you'll have is the base of these things will collapse, and then what I do is I pull them out one at a time. So I put this lid on, and I pull this container out, put it out of the way, and then I have to dump the tip out. Dump the tip out, grab the next container, and it's the same thing over and over again. And when I put the lids on, I don't put them on super tight. I've been dumping the tips out quickly. Okay, so there's the tip, and then it dumps out. So put the lid on, and the way I put the lid on is you put it on, it snaps on, and then again, I don't keep it, because I'm in the hood, I don't really need to put it on tight. Pull it out, and then get rid of that. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. The other containers that I have in here are the smaller containers, and it's the same story with those. And you know, it's interesting, even though I have put the pipettes in here, sometimes they do the containers when they're nested like this, and again, you do this to save space when you're autoclaving, but sometimes, like even these two, they do get stuck together a little bit, even though you have pipettes in between them. Okay. But I think you get the idea on how all of this is done. Now I have to do the rest now. Oh, I think I forgot to get the tip. You know, everything inside the container is sterile, so even if I would forget a pipette tip in there, it's sterile. It just would be in the medium and it would be okay. Okay, so that's how you prepare these. Again, it's a thing that is Not hard to do, but I've ruined quite a few of these containers when I would autoclave them without allowing a space so that the containers could vent when they're cooling down, and then you essentially lose containers. You get collapse, and you don't think it's bad, but it's bad. I mean, the containers come out and the bottom gets sucked up, and then so you try setting them down flat, and they'll set down like this because the bottoms just get pulled up in there after the containers cool. All right, so again, a real technical type of thing of how do you do this. And again, stacking the containers lets you put a lot more containers in a limited space, certainly if you have a small pressure cooker or autoclave. Now, even with a larger, kind of semi-large autoclave that I have, I still, you can't put, these containers are big, and you still can't put that many of them in there. Okay. That's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed my video. I hope it was useful to you. If you like my video and you want to keep on seeing my videos, it would help me out if you can click on like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you're not already a subscriber. All right, that's all I have in the lab in Southwest Florida for today. Happy propagating.